We're off and running on the Krueger Show. Hope everybody's having a good day. July 16th, 9 o'clock, 9:03 on the West Coast, 3 minutes after midnight back east. Hope you're having a great one. Welcome to the Krueger Show, brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out. They're in Emeryville. They're in Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week in both spots from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m., or they do run out, so try to get there before 8 p.m. Get some brisket chili. It's all great, but I love the brisket. The brisket chili is phenomenal. Just thinking of big chunks of brisket in a spicy chili. I mean, it's phenomenal. And then the house-made or the homemade potato chips you can only get in Marin County. That's the Corte Madera location, and they are worth it. They put them in the same rub they put on the barbecue chicken.
Ooh,
absolutely an amazing chip, an amazing potato chip. So check them out. And, of course, check out Underdog Fantasy. The link is in the description. Use that promo code KRUEG, K-R-U-E-G, and they'll match you up to your first $100. And also thanks to our sponsor at Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles. They're at 205 Cypress Avenue down Pacific Grove. My good friend Anthony Catania. Give him a call, 831-521-5264. And thanks to all those companies for being proud sponsors of the Krueger Show. All right. Well, we've been talking a lot about Brandon Aiyuk. And we titled the stream, will Brandon Aiyuk hold out from Niner training camp? Unless you are sleeping under a rock today and haven't heard the news, Brandon Aiyuk requested a trade. He's been basically expressing his unhappiness with this contract the entire offseason, but he's never gone as far as to officially request a trade until today. The Niners are preparing to go to training camp next week. Today was the day the rookies reported. Next week will be the day that the veterans report. I think the first practice, I think it's a week from today or a week from tomorrow.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, and then it's on. And then 3 preseason games later, and a week and a half off, and it's time for week 1 of the NFL. And of course, the Niners take on the Jets in week 1. But let's talk a little bit about Aiyuk, Dieter, because Dieter Kurtenbach here with us from KMBR. He's a phenomenal guest. He's with us normally on Thursday nights, but Dieter's doing some vacationing.
There's a lot of stuff going on, Larry. And frankly, I'm so glad that me and Brandon Aiyuk coordinated so that we can make this happen on a Tuesday.
I know, seriously. When I saw that you were switching to Tuesday, I was like, that's a bummer. But then all of a sudden I saw Aiyuk break that today, and I was like, oh, perfect. This is perfect. I would have. Now we'll have Dieter, and we'll have a nice big stream tonight, and we'll get a bunch of people talking about it.
Yep.
But let's get into the Aiyuk thing, because he's 26. He's got a year left remaining on his rookie contract. It's that 5th-year option. He's set to make $14.1 million this year. Mm-hmm. We all know he's been seeking a contract extension that would probably double his salary this year. And the Niners would get some cap relief if they could agree on a long-term number. It's not like there's no benefit to them to hammer out a long-term deal. They have more cap room in the present if they can get this deal done. I believe they have like the 6th or 8th most right now, so they're not hurting necessarily for cap room after redoing a number of deals.
Right.
And the Niners have planned to re-sign Aiyuk. They have said they want him to be a focal point of the franchise. Mm-hmm. And, if he does come back, the Niners are bringing back all 11 offensive starters from one of the best offenses in football. In fact, they finished first in offensive points per game. They averaged 28.4 a game, first in offensive efficiency, first in offensive expected points added, second in yards per game in 2023 with Aiyuk as a major, he wasn't like a bit player in this thing. He was a major leading receiver here. He led them in receiving. All pro. Yeah. Second straight year. He led them in receiving, career high in receiving yards, over 1,300, led the league in yards per target, 12.9, finished second in yards per catch at 17.9 to George Pickens. Mm-hmm. I mean, he had a really, really good year. There is no deadline, by the way. People saying, is there a deadline? No, there's no deadline for these two sides to strike a deal. Training camp and the regular season are all looming. Mm-hmm. So why don't we just get right into it? And, while he has asked for a trade officially today, the 49ers have said, you know what? We're not interested in a trade. which is consistent with what they've said. I mean, but I guess we'll get right into it. Why is it, do you think, right now? Why has Aiyuk, I guess, to this point, not requested a trade, and why did a trade request come today, Dieter?
I can't tell you with certainty that Brandon Aiyuk and his representatives haven't informally requested a trade. They just haven't made it public to this point. My understanding is that Brandon Aiyuk and his camp have had the liberty to go and find a trade if they had that wherewithal about them for the last couple of months. And that the 49ers don't, in fact, want to trade Brandon Aiyuk, but if someone were to offer them something that was too good to refuse, meaning elite level draft picks, which is what they were shopping for before the 2024 NFL draft, they would be willing to move on from Brandon Aiyuk, particularly now that we are in the $30 million territory when it comes to what Brandon Aiyuk is asking for with his new contract. So no one officially asked for a trade. He leaked today via NFL Network that and this is how you know he leaked it. Now, by the way, it's his representatives, that he respectfully asked the 49ers for a trade. Well, I respectfully would like to note that the 49ers have already tried to trade this guy. So your trade request means nothing. It means like, oh, I want to be traded. Dude, we've already tried to do that. We would have loved to have traded you. We were looking to trade you. No one made the deal. This is what the 49ers, though.
Do you think nobody made an offer, or do you think that the Niners asking price might have been exorbitant?
I don't think those two things are mutually exclusive. I think that the offers that were made never came close to what the 49ers were asking for. And I don't know if exorbitant's the right term, but it was certainly significant. They weren't going to just get rid of this guy the way that we saw like Stephon Diggs get dumped or anything like that. The 49ers are very intent on giving Brandon Aiyuk this new contract. It would have to take a significant, massive, probably massive is the better term, trade offer when it comes to draft picks in order to get this thing done. No one, I'm not sure there's a team out there willing to give Brandon Aiyuk the money that he wants. Strictly, if we're just holding it to, if Brandon Aiyuk were a free agent right now, I'm not sure there's a team in football who would give him the $30 million, $31 million a year that he wants. He wants to be paid more than Amon-Ra St. Brown. He wants to be paid in the ballpark, if not more, than A.J. Brown. So all the Browns, he wants to be over them. He wants to be the second highest paid wide receiver in football. I'm not sure there is a team that would do that if Brandon Aiyuk were, in fact, on the open market. He is, of course, not. But again, if we're just talking the contract numbers, the 49ers don't want to give it to him. I'm not sure there's another team that wants to give it to him. So then to stack on top of that, the only way to give him that contract is to then trade what is a significant, perhaps exorbitant amount of draft picks to the 49ers. No one's doing that two-step dance. They'll give up the draft picks for a cheap Brandon Aiyuk. They'll give Brandon Aiyuk maybe a big contract, maybe not, but they don't want to have to give up the draft picks. No one's doing both. So Brandon Aiyuk asking for a trade after the team has already tried to trade him is just him again. And I've said this a million times, and I guess I'm going to have to say it a million times more. This is him again, not understanding how to run the plays in the here's how you get a new contract playbook. This is him again doing something unserious and frankly embarrassing in this sort of process, trying to exact what little leverage he has in the negotiations. And every single step along this path, whether it's flirting with other teams, going on podcasts saying, I want to, all these things, the TikTok stuff. There's all these little things that can maybe just get a little shimmy of leverage in there compared to what the Niners have, which is the full bore of leverage. They got the massive crank. Brandon Aiyuk's just trying to get a little sliver somewhere along the process. Every time he's tried to do that, he and his representatives have messed this up. To suggest a trade today, when it's the first day of training camp, Ricky Pearsall goes on non-football injury list. It's just like it was on the calendar and they said it and they, get Mike Garoppolo or whoever the hell, put it out at NFL Network and they put out, please tweet exactly this. It's just, it's empty and it's embarrassing because there is a way to do this. There is a way to get, the public on your side, to get other teams excited about it, pressuring their organizations to maybe make a move. There's a way to get what little leverage you have and maximize it. And all Brandon Aiyuk has done is absolutely minimize his leverage at every step, to the point where now the 49ers are having to ask themselves the question, hey, are we willing to give this guy as much money as he wants? And so, it's a fair question. Every other team has to ask it now, and I don't think they're going to answer yes.
Mike Silver, who we both know, says, put this out on Twitter. He says, if you're wondering whether another team would pay Aiyuk what he's asking for, there's at least one that would. A front office source for a potential trade partner confirmed that to me earlier today. So maybe there's
one.
Maybe there is a team out there that's willing to pay. I mean, you got to remember this. Everybody's cap is in a different spot. Mm-hmm. The Commanders have a ton of cap room. The Pats have a ton of cap room. Yeah. Some of these teams have a ton of cap room. The 49ers do not. The 49ers are hugged up pretty tight on the cap. So it's
there's no team that's going to go into a season other than the San Francisco 49ers and with the ability to sign a guy like Brandon Aiyuk or give Brandon Aiyuk the big contract he wants. There's no team that's like a Brandon Aiyuk away. You're talking about the Patriots and you're talking about the Commanders. They drafted 2 and 3 in this most recent draft for a reason. And it's not like they're just a Brandon Aiyuk away from being good again. So those draft picks that they have are pretty valuable. They're pretty important. Yeah. And for San Francisco, they'd be very interested in having them, but there's no one who's going to give up the draft picks and pay the contract. I can't tell you what team it is with Mike Silver.
Don't think it is. We're not sure if there'll be a team that will do it, but there might be. I mean, here's the thing. The NFL, Eli Wolf is the czar of all that is New England right now. That's Ron Wolf's kid.
Yep.
These decisions, it's just what's the value? The value is what somebody who's in charge thinks the value is.
That's right.
Because these teams don't usually build consensus. They have independent boards and independent opinions. So it's like the old saying, you only need one team to draft you. You only need one team to value you for you to have value. So, I don't know. I would think you're basically right that there probably isn't a team out there that's willing to give the Niners what they want in compensation and can satisfy Aiyuk in a trade. Or satisfy Aiyuk in a contract.
Well, Larry, we've already figured out that that's the case. What I'm saying is not a prediction. It's a fact of the matter. The 49ers shopped this dude before the draft. They were shopping him to every team in the NFL.
We just don't know what the ask was. It's very possible the 49ers said, hey, you know what? I was watching a John Middlecoff video, and he's like, hey, I'd tell everybody he's available right now, but I want a first and a second. And if you're not offering a first and a second, don't bother.
Yeah.
So, he's saying attach a very high price tag in a trade and see who, basically just set the price really high. Otherwise, say, I'm keeping him. Otherwise, I'm keeping him. And maybe that's what the Niners game plan is going to be. The Niners are in a unique spot because there is no player in football that's getting a bigger raise than Brock Purdy from this year to next year. And they're the team that has to account for that. Yet here's Aiyuk, and he's like, hey, man, Justin Jefferson got paid, and Devontae got paid, and A.J. Brown got paid, and Jalen Waddle got paid. Amon-Ra got paid. I want to get paid, and all those guys signed deals. St. Brown, A.J. Brown, and Jefferson all signed deals that average at least $30 million a year.
And people talk about that average money. We've talked about this before, Larry. The real number that matters is the fully guaranteed. You look at Amon-Ra St. Brown's contract. Amon-Ra St. Brown's a wonderful player. And the Lions and him came to an agreement. And the big number that everyone said, he got 30. He got 30. Okay, well, he got 30 for like a year and a half. Like after that, the Detroit Lions, if they want, they can dump his ass for next to nothing. These wide receiver contracts are effectively 1+1s. There's a lot of option money in here. It's a big number and it makes a nice headline. It's not generational wealth. It's not multi-generational wealth when you are constantly having to prove yourself to get those contracts extended. Because they say it's a 5-year deal. It's like a 2-year deal, maybe. Most of the time, it's like a year and a half. Even Justin Jefferson, there's a big out after 2025, the 2025 season. That's 2 years. And so, he's getting this massive amount of money. And yes, they say, it's a lot of fully guaranteed money too. But there are easy outs for all of these teams. And if I'm Brandon Aiyuk, I'm not looking for the out. And the 49ers have put themselves with the previous people who were elite at their positions or all pros at their positions and got new contracts. They didn't put those outs in there. They were committed to them long term with the fully guaranteed money. If I'm Brandon Aiyuk, that's the only thing I should be caring about. And I think the 49ers are there. The issue that I've had with this entire situation is I haven't heard from anybody in all these conversations that Aiyuk's camp has had with the 49ers. Aiyuk has not come down off of his asking price. He is basically saying, here is the price, take it or leave it, except he's not the one with leverage in this situation. The 49ers don't have to do anything. It's cheaper for them to do nothing. It's more advantageous for them to do nothing. There's some value in having cost certainty with Brandon Aiyuk going into a Brock Purdy negotiation, but it's also pretty valuable to have dudes on one-year deals in the NFL so that you don't have dead money for a guy who, heaven forbid, has a serious injury and is never the same player again. And
and also you don't know. I mean, you could have drafted the two greatest receivers the league's ever seen in Pearsall and Cowing, but you could draft two guys that can't make your team. And so it's like, are you going to know more about Pearsall and Cowing today or a year from now? I mean, it's clearly a year from now. So in a way, asking the 49ers to make this commitment before they really know what they have at wide receiver definitively, it's maybe not in their best interest. I mean, the other thing that's going on here is that, what do these sides really want? Do the Niners want Aiyuk or do they want him to move on? Does Aiyuk want to be a Niner or does he want to move on? He said on the record that he expects to be a 49er in 2024. He supposedly texted Shanahan and said, great draft pick when took Ricky Pearsall in the first round. The Niners have remained totally steadfast that they have no desire to trade Aiyuk.
Right.
And then his trade request supposedly is not changing their look at, their perspective on that. And then trading him next year. I mean, let's just say they did franchise. Let's say they did let him play on the 5th-year option. A lot of people saying, oh, that's the plan. Let him play on the 5th-year option. All right. But trading him next July for draft picks in the 2026 draft.
I mean, they would try to trade him before the end of April in the draft, just like they did this year. They would want to be able to actualize the return immediately.
But even trading him for draft picks alone is a non-starter for me because you're inside your Super Bowl window. But if if there was
window
a team
changes when Brock Purdy gets paid $60 million a year, Larry, and that starts next year.
I mean, it's if a team is offering some kind of a difference-making veteran player in exchange for Aiyuk, would the Niners change their stance that he's not available? I mean, those kinds of trades are really rare in the NFL, and we rarely see them. And really, this time of the year, it's unlikely. Yeah. But I mean, I'll take New England for a second. I mean, I think the assumption is if you trade him, you're going to lose. You automatically lose. But to me, if you could trade him to New England, let's just say.
Okay.
And you could get back Christian Gonzalez, a receiver,
in his career.
Kendrick Bourne, or if you don't like Kendrick Bourne, you want DeMario Douglas, or just some receiver that they have that they could throw you, and and Gonzalez and some kind of conditional day 3 pick. I'd probably do it. I mean, I think Gonzalez probably could start at corner. If you get DeMario Douglas, he could make your team as a receiver.
Yeah, Pop's a good player.
I don't, DeMario Douglas and a 5th and Christian Gonzalez deal done. Let's get down the road. I know those deals are kind of rare, but it doesn't have to. I mean, I could make a pretty compelling argument that if you gave the Niners Christian Gonzalez, DeMario Douglas, and a 5th-round pick, that that's pretty fair, and that's something that they should have interest in doing. And they might even be better off when you factor in that they already drafted Pearsall and Cowing anyway, and their need is really more on the corner than it is at receiver.
I mean, I don't think that they have a tremendous. I think corner might be the deepest position on the team, and it's in the argument with wide receiver. I mean, that's. But I mean,
a starting corner. I mean, you can always use a great corner. And is Christian Gonzalez a great corner? I don't know, but he was.
I think he's only played about 12, 13 games. I mean, and he looked good, but he's also coming off a shoulder injury.
Yeah,
this past off season, and you never know how that. I mean, this is why teams like to get draft picks instead of, even in the case of a Gonzalez, like a young player. Well, the young players got just the wear and tear of one NFL season, and it's a game of attrition. There's only so much that a guy can take on, whereas at least you have multiple options, and every front office thinks that they're the smartest front office and that their guys will always hit, even though the track record of every front office is that is in fact not the case. So, listen, I'll say this. The 49ers very much want Brandon Aiyuk to be a long-term 49er, and they are willing to make, and I hate this, it makes me sound like a shill, but like, these are the facts of the matter. They're willing to pay him $27 million. That's their opening offer. And it's come up a little bit from what they originally thought he would cost, right? But the opening offer is never the final offer. If Brandon Aiyuk wants to take that, they'd be thrilled. It's kind of a low ball given the market rate. Brandon Aiyuk wants $32 million a year. And again, the fully guaranteed money is the stuff that matters. I don't have a great grasp on where the Niners are with that and where Aiyuk is with that, because it's not headline stuff. But when this stuff leaks out and is passed through the grapevine, you do get that annual average value locked in. Those are kind of the numbers that people talk about for kind of all the wrong reasons. Regardless, Aiyuk wants 31, 32. 49ers want to give him 26-ish. Okay. Reasonable people can get together and come up with 28 or 29. And ultimately, I do think that's what happens here. The issue is that the 49ers, as we've noted multiple times before, not just on this show, but on every other show that we've ever talked about, don't have to do squat, because Brandon Aiyuk's under contract and there's 2 franchise tags looming over his head. And for the next 3 years, he's theirs. If they want him on the team, he's on the team. And so it's on Brandon
But
Aiyuk.
it could be uncomfortable.
Oh, it's already uncomfortable, Larry, and it can get
really
saying, friendly real fast if they just
it
make
hasn't
the deal.
been uncomfortable in the past, but this would be uncomfortable. More times than not, the Niners have gotten these deals done.
Yep.
So they don't have a example of a guy who wanted a long-term extension, thought he was getting one, was told in the 11th hour, no, you're not getting one, show up and play at this amount. They haven't played that level of hardball yet.
They also haven't negotiated with anybody who refuses to acknowledge that he doesn't have the leverage and come down from what is a legitimately ridiculous ask. They've been dealing with reasonable actors to this point. I mean, even the Nick Bosa contract negotiations, which took the entire offseason and the entirety of the preseason, those were serious, earnest negotiations between 2 camps that actually wanted to get a deal done. You can't, when Brandon Aiyuk is out here asking to be the highest paid receiver in the NFL, it's not a reasonable ask for him. I think he's a wonderful player, and I think he deserves to be paid very close to that top 5, money. That's fine by me. I mean, it's not my money. I don't give a damn. But like, the notion that he's coming out here and he wants it all, and then when the 49ers say no, he goes, well, what are you going to do about it? As if he has the leverage, is preposterous, because not only does he not have the leverage, he's squandered every bit of leverage he's had up until this point. So until he comes down even just a little bit, the 49ers have no reason to come up. The ball is in his court here to actually get something done, because the 49ers, again, start fining him the day that he doesn't show up to the beginning of training camp. And they start fining him heavy if he misses any preseason games. And everyone goes, oh, well, the fines will be forgiven. The hell they will if he doesn't sign a new contract. Brandon Aiyuk could lose like 25 to 30% of what he's about to get paid by the 49ers this season if he wants to do some sort of a holdout. Now, if he wants to try to do a hold in, that's another thing. And then the union gets involved, and it might not work out for him.
For people who don't know what a hold in is, it basically means that you'd report, you'd show up, you'd go to meetings, you'd watch film. You just wouldn't take the risk of putting on pads and going on the field.
Yeah. And I think
you wouldn't get out there and strap it up, but you would still be lifting, running on the side, and attending meetings.
And that's something that
usually that's on the left when you're in the final stages.
That's right. Usually I'm already here. I'm already negotiating. I might as well save myself some money.
Right. Usually, isn't that almost, has there ever been a hold in that then became a holdout and there was a parting of the ways? I can't.
Khalil Mack was really weird. Khalil Mack was really weird with the
Usually
Raiders.
It shows some kind of ability, desire for the two sides to play ball.
And I'll say this. If Brandon Aiyuk wants to just come out of the $30 million number, if he just wants to come off that, which he has no reason to want to do that unless he wants a new deal. If he just comes down into the 20s, I am certain the 49ers will come up from their offer. This is not some hard and fast thing. The issue is that both sides are acting as if their numbers are hard and fast. And the only person who can change that is Brandon Aiyuk, because the 49ers, again, have no impetus. It costs them more money to get this negotiation done than Brandon Aiyuk is costing himself money the second that this training camp starts, and he decides that, you know, an extra $2 or $3 million a year is worth what? Tens of millions of dollars? At a certain point, he's cutting off his nose to spite his face when it comes to this negotiation. And honestly, given how everything has gone to this point, I wouldn't be surprised if he follows through on that. I find this whole thing to be embarrassing for Athletes First, his agency, more than anything else, because I don't know who would be able to, you know, handle. There's a lot of pressure, and, you know, he's 26 years old. Like, you want to cut the guy a ton of slack. His representatives have, in theory, been through this before. Athletes First is embarrassing itself right now. And you look at his agent and some of the other clients that he's had. The only person sorry, Ryan Williams, I believe is his name. The only other client, the only other client who has been in a situation of this magnitude was Josh Norman, when Josh Norman was trying to figure out what to do at the end of his Carolina tenure before he signed that big deal with Washington. I think it was 5 years, $75 million with Washington. You can say, oh, well, you know, Williams got him that big deal in Washington. Well, he also got the Carolina Panthers to rescind a franchise tag where Josh Norman wanted to stay in Carolina. He felt like they could work out a deal. They could figure something out. And against his client's wishes, he worked out a deal somewhere else. And it's just like, what a mess. What a mess. And then you look at this Aiyuk situation, and you're like, what a mess. The second that your agent is saying, why don't you go on TikTok to help get the public on your side here, that person should be fired on the spot, because they're unserious about something that's going to be a 9-figure contract. And if I'm giving somebody 9 figures of money, I want them to be serious people. And I think Brandon Aiyuk's a serious dude. I think he's getting terrible advice. And while I do think this thing gets done, I think that it's going to continue to be messier than it ever needed to be. And I think that Athletes First has to wear that, because there's no track record of this of Brandon Aiyuk's representative showing good leadership in situations like this. And that's really a shame for Brandon Aiyuk.
You know, football is, we're at a unique point in history, because analytics are a big part of sports, and yet they're just starting to kind of break through into football. Mm-hmm. And I bring this up because, you know, we're having a hard time establishing what is the value of Brandon Aiyuk. He's a great receiver. He blocks in the run game with a vengeance. And there's receivers all over this league that don't block in the run game at all.
Right.
And then he's super tough. He catches balls across the middle. He never, ever has alligator arms or peaks. He dominates in the middle of the field where your quarterback, you know, needs him to dominate. And he does. Warren Sharp, who's one of my favorite follows on X, says, forget counting stats as it relates to determining Brandon Aiyuk's value. Since trading for Christian McCaffrey, the 49ers throw the ball at the 32nd rate in the NFL, which means they throw the ball less than anybody else in football. That's dead last. That's right. And they operate at a very slow pace as well. They're 28th in the NFL in pace, offensive snaps per game. So when you run the ball the most, pass the ball the least, and operate at one of the slowest, most deliberate paces in all of football, those are 3 factors that all put a drag on Brandon Aiyuk's stats. And he's never, and as Sharp points out accurately here, he says he's never going to put up massive numbers in that environment. He says Aiyuk ranked number 1 in the NFL in yards per target. He also ranked number 1 in the NFL in percentage of first downs or touchdowns per target. And then he finishes up by saying he's an outstanding asset in San Francisco, but we'll never see his ceiling in this offense. And that would be my question. It's like, that's the kind of the conundrum here. What's his real value? And then the other question is, take Aiyuk's name out of it. Take Debo's name out of it. Take Jawan's name out of it.
Fair enough.
Does it make sense when you take the names and the emotion of the argument? Because people are tied emotionally to these players, especially if they've bought their jersey. I own Aiyuk's jersey. I'm emotionally tied.
Fair enough.
But you know, is it smart to pay $66 million to receivers when you're going to run the ball as infrequently as the 49ers do? I mean, that's the bigger overarching question. It's not about Aiyuk or Debo or JJ. It's just about, if you're going to run as much as they do, does it make sense to devote this much of a hard cap sport to receivers? What do you think?
Let's talk about Justin Jefferson for a minute, because I think that it's not even the 49ers system that lends itself to the question. I think it's an overarching question about the wide receiver position in the year 2024, 2025. Think about what the Vikings did to get Justin Jefferson. They had Stephon Diggs. Stephon Diggs made arguably the biggest play in Vikings history, right? It's an incredible thing. They win the play. I mean, it was Case Keenum, unbelievable. And they say, Stephon Diggs, interesting cat. I don't think you're worth it. I don't think you're worth what you're asking for. And they ship him off to Buffalo. And he gets the money in Buffalo, gets the targets in Buffalo. And by the way, then Buffalo said, you know what? I don't think you're worth it anymore. And they ship him off to Houston. But
he might have a little bit of a runs hot personality, I have a feeling, too.
He's an interesting cat, was the way I phrased it. Regardless, the Minnesota Vikings looked at their situation with unquestionably an elite wide receiver and said, nah, we're good. And they went and that very draft took Justin Jefferson. I think it was 18th overall, something like that. It doesn't matter. It wasn't like number one. He wasn't like Marvin Harrison Jr. Worked out pretty well. And you and I both know that every year the wide receiver talent in the draft just gets deeper and deeper, to where you got guys who are going in the third round, sometimes fourth round, day 3 guys who you would have a couple of years ago said, oh, that's a first round player. That's a second round player. This is a top 50 kind of guy. Those guys are going at, 122. College football can't create offensive linemen anymore. Linebackers are no good anymore. Cornerbacks are a joke at the college level because of all the cover 4, but god damn can they create some wide receivers, man. They got some dudes coming out of the, and it's every single year. So if you're asking me fundamentally, is it right to pay this guy or any guy? I would say no. I would say that wide receiver has never been more disposable. And the notion of paying a guy 12% of your salary cap as a wide receiver is kind of foolhardy. I'll give myself a counter argument here, though. Kyle Shanahan is so demanding of wide receivers. He is so meticulous in their responsibilities in the game plan, that the notion that, and we're going to find out with Pearsall and Cowing this year, and we're both very high. I'm very high on Pearsall. You're very high on Cowing. We think that they have a chance to be special from day one, respectively. Kyle is so demanding of what he asks his receivers to do more than any. He's so hard on that position. He played that position. He asked them to be much like the quarterback, offensive coordinators on the field. That when you have someone who is unquestionably an elite player in the league at that position, who does all of the things that you ask that position to do, which is above and beyond the responsibilities of damn near every other team. When you have somebody like that, you probably need to keep them around, because while every other team might be able to just plug and play at wide receiver, Kyle Shanahan has shown that it's a pretty rare breed who can do everything that he wants an ex-receiver to do. It is Emmanuel Sanders, who they had to bring in halfway through the 2019 season to teach everybody how to be a receiver. He was effectively the wide receivers coach, which says a lot about Wes Welker, who was the wide receivers coach at the time. Kyle had no problem with Mike McDaniel taking Wes Welker when he went to Miami. And then there was a gap. There's a gap after that, after Emmanuel Sanders left, until Brandon Aiyuk upped his game, understood what was being, asked of him, grew up a little bit. Not that he was ever immature or anything, but he had to mature into his professionalism a bit, and took over that role in a big way these past 2 years with Brock Purdy at the helm, because they have a great chemistry together. To just toss that out the door because a schlub like me says that wide receivers have never been more expendable, I might be right, but how much are you willing to bet on that expendability? How much are you willing to bet on some kid that has never done it before, when it took Brandon Aiyuk 3 years to figure it out? And Brandon Aiyuk is a pretty special player. So again, we're talking about a difference when we're talking about the Niners offer and Aiyuk's ask.
It's kind of
about $5 million. Like, they got to figure that out.
It kind of reminds me of when I was in college.
Yeah.
And I wanted to get a Jeep, and I found out it would cost a whole lot more if I was going to get a 4-wheel drive. The 4-wheel drive is going to cost a lot more, and it was going to cost a lot more insurance wise too.
No doubt.
So I sat there and I'm like, but I can't, it's a Jeep. If I'm going to go Jeep, I got to go with a 4-wheel drive.
Of course.
So I did it, bit the bullet, and spent the extra on the insurance, and the gas and all that.
Yeah.
But I was thinking to myself, yes, I'm driving around Sacramento, delivering court depositions and just going to college. Did I really? I've owned this car for 5 years now, and I've only put it in 4-wheel like twice.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And yet I'm paying more money every month for 4-wheel drive. Yeah. It's almost like the Niners, between JJ, Debo, and Aiyuk, are paying much more for receivers than they're getting out of their receivers. So it doesn't seem like really good, like a smart way to go about things.
Well, and they're going to be all in on it this year, but let's be clear, moving forward, they're not all in. I mean, moving forward, one of these 2 wide receivers is gone. Perhaps 2 of them are gone. I think this is Deebo Samuel's last year, regardless of anything that happens with Brandon Aiyuk, just because he was here for a good time, not for a long time, and they're not going to give him a new contract, so they need to move on from him to get some sort of value back in return. So there's that. And that is a factor on why they want to get this Aiyuk deal done and not, push it down the line, because they have resigned themselves to, this is it for Deebo Samuel. He's given us his best years. We're going to try to get something for him at the end of this year, and we're going to move on. That means you got to have that wide receiver 1. You can't be betting on Ricky Pearsall. Now, maybe they feel a very different way in 6 months or 12 months from now about Pearsall or Cowing or whomever. But you have to have a number 1. And by the way, I do think there's really something to be said for the chemistry on and off the field, though they're very different people off the field. The chemistry that Purdy and Aiyuk have. We've known Brandon Aiyuk now for a long time. He never talked about Jimmy Garoppolo like this. He never talked about Trey Lance like this. Obviously, it's easy to talk about Brock Purdy in glowing phrases, because Brock Purdy has been marvelous since he's been the quarterback of the 49ers. But I'll remember what, Brandon Aiyuk told me once. I was just hounding him for like weeks to talk to him about his chemistry with Purdy, and Purdy was great on it. And I'm like, I'm going to actually need Brandon Aiyuk to talk about this. He is a subject of this story I'm writing. And he finally broke down, and he just goes, listen, I know that if I get to my spot, the ball's going to be there. And I've never felt that before. Okay, well, that matters. That kind of stuff matters. And you're about to go into contract negotiations with Brock Purdy, who doesn't have to do anything. I guess they could franchise tag him just the same way they can do it with Brandon Aiyuk, but there's no 5th-year option for Brock Purdy. And Brock Purdy wants to be there, and there's no reason to think that Brock Purdy's going anywhere else, or that he'll start TikToking and flaunting around with other wide receivers on other teams or going on football. That's not Brock Purdy's ballgame. He's going to sign with the 49ers. He's going to make a shit ton of money from the 49ers. But I think that he'd prefer to be in a situation with that receiver, just as Brandon Aiyuk would prefer to be in a situation with the quarterback that he trusts, one of which is Brock Purdy. Apparently another one is Jaden Daniels. But the cost certainty of getting this deal done now, I think trumps a lot of these other concerns. I think the notion that the 49ers just want Brandon Aiyuk to play on his 5th-year option, they'll do it if they have to, but I don't think that's what they want. I don't think that's what they want at all. So,
well, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, there's all kinds of variables or all kinds of factors in this thing. What is it? I mean, is Deebo's future set, do you think? I mean, I know a lot of people say, well, all the signs point to him. He's going to play out this year in his current contract. And then when the Niners sign Aiyuk, they're going to move off of Deebo. And that's the kind of the foregone conclusion. But Shanahan loves Deebo.
He does.
Deebo's got no more guaranteed no guaranteed money on his deal after this year. There would be a $15.1 million dead money charge if the Niners cut or traded him before June 1st. And the move would also save $9.1 million against their 25 cap.
Right.
And then I can't imagine, I can't see them moving off of Deebo, but if they did somehow sign Aiyuk and for whatever reason they went down the crapper and they got to October and they were, not a playoff caliber team this year, I can't see that happening. No. I could see them maybe entertaining some offers for Deebo, maybe at the trade deadline. But what do you think? I mean, I think the assumption is that they're going forward with Aiyuk, but I get the feeling that Shanahan really likes Deebo. Deebo may be more of a team guy. He might be willing to take more of a discount going forward. He seems like he's been working out with a vengeance this offseason. Is it a foregone conclusion that this is Deebo's final season with the Niners?
It is. It's fait accompli. And Kyle Shanahan.
You think it is?
Yeah, I've been told that. I mean, full stop. I mean, they were trying to trade him, and they were very serious in negotiations with the Baltimore Ravens before the draft, and it fell apart at the last minute over kind of sounds like some bullshit. But they almost shipped him out before this season because they thought they could maximize the return. And I guess that they ultimately got some sense about him. I don't know. I don't have the full story of how it all fell apart, but I definitely know how far it got down the line to the point where a schlub like me's finding out about it with like specifics. And it's like, oh, okay. I mean, that is a pretty good return. I mean, we're talking 1st-round draft pick for, Deebo Samuel at this point in his career. That's a win. And that's not what they're going to be getting this time next year. But, the reason Deebo Samuel's working out like a fiend right now and going hardcore and is probably going to have an absolutely massive year is because the 49ers have effectively told them. I mean, not in specific terms, but like, hey, this is probably it for us. We got 1 year left to do this thing. This is the Super Bowl window as we once knew it. Brock's going to start to get paid next year. And in that, some cuts are going to have to be made. You have no more guaranteed money left. We can do a post-June 1 cut or trade now, much like they did with Aiyuk, so that can save even more money against the cap. Kind of that you put guys on the IL like retro to this date. They can I don't know the Latin for it, even though I took 3 years of Latin in high school. They can forward date it to be post June 1, which they did with Armstead. It's done. It's over. It's complete. And again, I think that's entirely separate from Aiyuk, though it's directly correlated when it comes to the money. But they very much feel as if they wanted to keep Deebo Samuel around, they would have extended him, right? Because Deebo Samuel would have been happy to get into a new contract with the 49ers.
Unless they feel like he's a player that has weight fluctuations and he needs the carrot constantly dangled.
That's fair. But
right. I mean, maybe they feel like he's an awesome talent that lacks motivation from time to time. I don't know.
Well, in which case he's still under contract for next year. Right.
Yeah.
It's just a guaranteed money thing. But again, they will have to make cuts when Brock's money comes onto the books, even with the salary cap going up and up and up. They'll certainly have to make cuts if Brandon Aiyuk does get the contract that he wants, that the 49ers want to give him. That compromise, no matter where it falls, it's going to, be another 25, 26, 27 against the cap, even if they, backload it, front load it, whatever. It's a big number. And Deebo's been picking up injuries, right? He wasn't really available for them in the Super Bowl. First half NFC Championship game, persona non grata, misses 3 games last year, plays a lot injured. You can't question the man's heart. You can't question the talent. You can't question the output. But ultimately, the way that guy plays is not conducive for a long career. This is not Tyler Lockett sliding every time he catches the ball so that he doesn't get hit. This is a dude who runs the fuck through people, and that is going to take a toll on anyone's body. He is bigger than most wide receivers, but he is not a big guy by NFL standards. And yeah, I think that the 49ers know how this thing ends, and they don't want to be left holding the bag in that regard. So yeah, I think Debo is done after this year. And the reason that he's still on this team this year, I can say, even though I don't know the exact details of how the deal with Baltimore broke down, I can say that he's still on the team this year because the 49ers know, as anyone would know, that their best chance to win the Super Bowl involves having Debo Samuel on their team. And I think the 49ers think, though no one can really know this because we're predicting the future, that their best chance of winning a Super Bowl in the Brock Purdy is paid more money than God era involves Brandon Aiyuk being their ex-receiver on the team, and in fact getting a lot more targets because, well, Debo Samuel ain't there anymore.
Yeah. The Niners, according to multiple sources, have put Ricky Pearsall on the non-football injury list.
They sent an email today. They're not even hiding that shit.
Yeah, they can activate him anytime. Supposedly, it's not serious. This guy wore the blue non-Gator blue jersey throughout OTAs.
Yeah.
How concerned are you that Pearsall is not tough, or not tough enough to live in the middle of the field where it's not for the faint of heart?
I'm far less concerned about it than you are. I really am.
He's like 188 pounds.
I don't disagree with that factual statement, but I saw, if that guy isn't tough, he's not a first-round pick, because his quarterbacks at Florida sucked, and that offense sucked. And all he did was make contested catch after contested catch with multiple dudes running directly into his rib cage. Now, those guys weren't in the NFL, so there is a different beast there. But the idea that he's not tough when he is taking kidney shot after kidney shot just doesn't hold scrutiny for me, having watched begrudgingly, because I do not like the Florida Gators, begrudgingly having watched every one of his snaps for the last 2 years. Toughness was not a concern I walked away with. Now, we can talk about his frame. We can talk about, obviously, the separation. Even SEC, you can talk about the separation of size, speed, and talent at the NFL level versus the SEC level. We can get into all that, and I don't think that any of those points would be incorrect or invalid. But if you watch what he did at Florida, this is a tough son of a bitch, and that's the only way that you can be successful given what he was left to deal with in that Florida offense last year. And by the way, I mean, it's that entire Florida coaching staff is going to be fired halfway through this upcoming season. And Ricky Pearsall still found a way after transferring there to become a first round and certainly a number one wide receiver on that team with bad quarterback play, bad coaching. It was a hot mess. And this dude took 1 year and balled out so goddamn hard the 49ers took him in the first round. If that guy ain't tough, I don't know what tough is, Larry.
Juwan Jennings put on his Instagram this saying, you got to be a different type of person to act like you're doing everything by yourself, knowing dang well you're not. A lot of people are suggesting that he's sending a strong message to Brandon Aiyuk after his trade request today. Other people say, you never know. Plausible deniability. He's talking about somebody else, this and that.
Yeah.
What do you think? I mean, do you think Juwan is a tough guy in his own right? He's pretty outspoken.
That dude's a tough son bitch.
Yeah, I'd say he's one of the tougher guys on the team, even though he's a receiver.
No doubt.
But you got to be a different type of person to act like you're doing everything by yourself, knowing dang well you're not.
I mean, Juwan's just a socialist. I don't know. I don't know how to,
break it down. You think that's intended for Aiyuk?
You know what?
What do you believe?
I think that anyone posting messages, subtweeting, and Instagram storying or whatever, it's probably a little bit of something and a little bit of something else. And frankly, to give any credence to any of it is such a I mean, it's soap opera bullshit. And I will say this about Juwan Jennings. He is a we want to talk about a different cat, different kind of dude. Juwan Jennings is a different kind of dude. Juwan's a big personality. So if I had to bet, we're asking, truth serum, all that good stuff. I'd say it's for Aiyuk. But you know what? If you ask him, he'll probably say that it's actually, no, it's about my guy who was down here and he had this situation and all that. I don't know. I'm such an old, boring man that I couldn't possibly understand any of the pop culture references that would be happening. So I just have to presume it's Brandon Aiyuk because, frankly, that's the only thing I know that's going on. Any sort of zeitgeist stuff, forget it. I got no chance.
Couple last ones here. First things first, Nick Wright says that if you take Brandon Aiyuk away from the Niners, that their Super Bowl window officially closes. Agree or disagree?
Their Super Bowl window closes after this year. They're going to have to start a new one. They're going to have to close that window and then hope that they got another window in that room and open it up. And
but if they traded Aiyuk this year, is their window closed this year?
If Brandon Aiyuk does not play for the San Francisco 49ers in 2024, which is a situation that I have a hard time believing could happen, but if that were to happen, they are an appreciably worse team, and I have a very hard time believing that they can win the Super Bowl. Though I got to say, I've started to do a little bit more, I've started to get back into it, do a little bit more of a deep dive into the NFC is not good. The NFC, I mean, people are holding up the Packers like
Rams, Detroit, Philly,
like the Rams.
Green Bay. Those are the best teams besides the Niners.
I got a big question about Philly so long as Sirianni's the head coach, though I do think that they made some good coordinator hires. They're going to bring in Vic. Vic couldn't get it done in Miami
too. I mean, no
doubt.
They had Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. I like Devin White.
They always have great personnel. They had great personnel last year. The team fell apart. And they got Super John as their head coach, and he cares more about being loved by the fans than actually getting results on the field. That situation is toxic. I'm not betting on them any way, shape, or form. I've talked to you about this before. I think that this general anointing of Jordan Love has a chance to look real stupid real fast this season. The way that they insulated him in the second half of the year, no other team would even consider doing. They went max protect and ran two wide receivers route after route after route, and they got away with it because they were playing teams that were tanking, teams that had no business being on the field with them, couldn't compete talent-wise. And yes, they were doing very well against the 49ers in the first half, and then Steve Wilkes decided to pull his head out of his ass. And then what happened? I think that Jordan Love was incredibly insulated by a very smart head coach in LaFleur, and that now that they have 6-7 weeks of tape where Jordan Love was successful, well, they're going to have to expand on that. They went down to bare bones on offense in order to have Jordan Love be successful. That shit ain't going to work anymore. Now everyone knows what's coming. And they know that they just have to bring one. They can full out blitz every play. You're only running two guys on routes. And so I'm fascinated to see how it goes. Now, I could look like the asshole in a couple of months because Jordan Love has indeed made the leap and all this arm talent and the ability to make throws with every which direction and put the ball on a absolute spot. He could be absolutely awesome. But the fact of the matter is he was done. Persona non grata going into the Thanksgiving game. And the way that the Packers figured out how to get something out of him was to run effectively a high school offense for him. And it worked for a while. And again, you look at the schedule and it's pretty easy to see how it worked. Kid's got a lot of talent. They have a lot of talent. I think their defense is going to be really good this year. This notion that Jordan Love is an elite quarterback, boy, you got to prove it to me for more than 7 games. If Brock Purdy is still having to prove it after everything he's done, if it's still in question with Brock Purdy, I don't know how we can just say Jordan Love is the second coming of Aaron Rodgers. I think that's just foolhardy. The Lions, you can go ahead and bet on Jared Goff. I won't. I think the Rams are really good. I'm not going to say anything bad about the Rams because I think the Rams are actually going to be really good. Who's the second
best team in the conference?
The Rams.
Wow.
It's the 49ers and the Rams.
See, I think Detroit's due for some injuries.
Totally.
So, I mean, I think Detroit's been so, they've benefited. But I think Detroit,
they got
Philly,
dudes,
Green Bay.
Detroit's got dudes, but their defense is questionable.
I like the Rams too, but I don't think they have enough on defense.
The Rams made the playoffs last year, and yes, they still had Aaron Donald last year, but you look at that team. I mean, I was making jokes in the preseason, like, let's just make up names and then I'll make up a name, and you can say if that player is a starter for the Rams defense or not. And then I would name other ones like a Russ Yeast. And they go, oh, you made that. No, he was a starting safety. Yeah. And we would just go down the line.
That's they don't have much. I mean, they're better on the back
end. They made the playoffs with that team, and those guys turned out to be good, and now they're a year deeper.
Yeah, they're deeper, but I don't know. They everything went right for them on offense. I love them on offense.
There's a big question about Stafford, to be fair, because the injury stuff is there, but now they have 2 good running backs. Obviously, they have 2 great wide receivers. Offensive line got some reinforcement. If Matt Stafford's healthy, I'm having a hard time seeing how the 49ers just run away with the division. And that's not to, mention that Seattle and Mike McDonald is going to be there. And Mike McDonald sure gave Brock Purdy a hell of a time this last go around, albeit with very different, very elite personnel in Baltimore. Arizona's offense really came alive in the second half of last year. Their defense was shit, but they do have a defensive-minded head coach. I think they've done some really nice things with young players on that side in the draft and free agency and things like that. I think that their defense might not be complete ass, still be bottom 20, but not complete ass next year. And that offense has a chance to be really fun. I think the West is unquestionably the best division in the NFC. And I think the Rams are the second best team in the NFC. That's about the extent of the compliments I have for the NFC. So even if the 49ers were to lose Brandon Aiyuk,
they got a great shot
they got a good shot in the NFC. They're just not winning the flipping Super Bowl.
Well, you never know. You never know. I mean, one of these years, maybe Mahomes gets beat, or who knows? Maybe he gets hurt.
I'm not holding my breath on any of that.
He's amazing. Okay, one last one on the Niners, and then we got a couple of super chats, and I got one for you on the Warriors, one for you on the Giants. The last one on the Niners, and by the way, thanks to everybody who's in the stream. We got over 1,000 people here. Please hit like and subscribe. If you hit like, that just boosts the stream. More people find it. If you hit subscribe and click that notification bell anytime we go live, you'll get a little notification. Hey, we're going live. You don't have to miss any of it. So thanks to everybody who's supporting the Krueger Show as we approach 50,000 subs, getting ready for a big 49er season.
God damn, 50,000.
Yeah, seriously. It's been an incredible deal. And Kev's in Europe right now. In fact, we got this one. We got this one from 49er Throwback. He says, yay, Kev is back. Can't wait to see him on the show again. So what's going on with Pearsall? Brock Purdy disrespect never ends. He's elite, Steve Young. Yeah, Steve called him an elite processor. Kev is not back yet. He'll be back on the 20th in LA, and then he'll be back up here in Walnut Creek around the 21st or 22nd. So he will be here, but he's spent the last month in Europe, and he's having a good time. And we got this one from Bitterrill. He says, true that the Commanders can't trade McCaffrey yet. I believe that is the case.
Yeah,
I believe that is the case. I think rookies can't be dealt, but I don't know for sure. But he's saying it's true, unless that's supposed to be a question mark down there. And then
listen, if we're talking about Luke McCaffrey as something holding up this deal, then God help us all. I know you love Luke McCaffrey, and
I think it'd be a good story. I mean, if you're going to get a receiver, I'm saying
that's
I'm
okay. The Farhan friends and family plan right there, Larry. Like I don't give a can the guy help you win games.
I want Jonathan Allen. That's what I want. I mean, I think the Niners. If I can get Jonathan Allen, I'd take Luke McCaffrey as a throw-in. I just don't know that the Niners have to get a receiver coming back. I think they got so many damn receivers right now.
I'm with you on that. I'm not with you with the Christian Gonzalez one, just because that feels heavy for Christian Gonzalez to be the anchor of that kind of a deal.
Yeah,
but baby, if we're talking about an elite defensive tackle, you can convince me very easily that that's the way to go.
Yeah, I mean, if you can get and who knows how the Niners think of it, and Jonathan Allen probably makes a boatload of cash anyway, so it may not make sense.
That's fine. I'd give it to him. He's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, but they paid Deron Payne. They just paid some defensive ends. They just signed 20 veteran free agents. There's talk in D.C. that Jonathan Allen is available, so I don't know if that's true or not, but that's the talk.
I'm going to have a conversation there.
One Niner question before we finish up here. You're John Lynch. Everything that's happened has happened. You're in charge, and Aiyuk's got this trade request out. You know what your team looks like. You know you're inside your Super Bowl window. You can play your hand of cards a lot of different ways. How you playing your hand? What are you doing?
I do nothing. I do what Brandon Aiyuk should have been doing this entire time. I say, hey, we would love to have serious, adult, professional, 9-figure negotiations with you. We would love to sign you to a long-term contract to be a member of the San Francisco 49ers, and we are very ready to pay you a better than market rate, a market rate for your services. What we need to do is know that you're going to be able to engage in those negotiations, because every conversation we've had to this point, it feels like you're unwilling to engage in negotiations. You're holding to a number. We have told you we're not willing to pay that number. We would love to work something out. We would love to work something out. You let us know if you're willing to come off your number, and I think we can work something out. But until then, you are under contract for this upcoming season. We'd like to remind you that the franchise tag is available to us. We'd love to have you on long-term deal, keep you as a 49er for the rest of your career. But ultimately, it's upon you, Brandon Aiyuk, to come off a number that we have told you we will not meet. So the ball is in your court, and we're hoping that that you give us a call here soon, because, by the way, come next Tuesday, we're going to start fining you $45,000 a day.
I'm having one conversation with him, but it's not a, I think the Niners are pointing in the same direction that Aiyuk's pointing. I think he's pointing towards leaving. I think they're pointing towards him leaving. And to me, sending him out of the conference to a team like New England makes a lot of sense. And what the deal I would try to make with New England is Aiyuk. They got tons of cap room. They got no weapons. They got a first, brand new rookie quarterback. They got a, Alex Van Pelt's their OC. You got, Jacoby Brissett, Drake May, Joe Milton at your quarterback. It's a run heavy scheme. They need a receiver. They need a big time guy. They don't have any receivers.
Tell me Kendrick Bourne doesn't scratch that itch for them?
Yeah, it's the worst receiving core in the
Pop Douglas.
I would say, here, I'll give you Aiyuk. I want Demario Douglas, small 5'8" second-year receiver.
Yeah.
I want Christian Gonzalez, and I want a second-round pick in next year's draft. And that's it. You can, you're right. Christian Gonzalez is probably too light, even though he was a first-round pick.
Yeah.
But a replacement receiver, a corner, and a second from a team like New England, where you got a pretty good expectation that that's going to be, in the top 35. That could be pick number 33. It really could be. Could almost be like a first. And that might be your ticket next year to combine those two late picks to try to get up to 15 or so to get that tackle that you're obviously going to need at some point that you didn't get this year. But that's what I would do. I would not mess around with it. I would not have him show up or hold in and the reality is that you can't afford this guy. You're going to pay Brock Purdy $60 million and you don't even throw the ball, and you got a bunch of receivers, and you just drafted two more that you like. And you just drafted a couple running backs. So, I mean, you're going to probably run the ball a little bit more. You probably, your offensive line's a better run blocking line. You probably could afford to run the ball a little bit more and just use Brock Purdy as as kind of the guy with the continuity piece. To me, that's a very, very reasonable deal. Christian Gonzalez, Demario Douglas, and a second-round pick. And New England gets a big-name guy that they can build around and a young receiver they can pair with Drake May. And the Niners get down the road on the cap, and they get a couple pieces they can use and maybe have a beginning to getting that offensive tackle that they're going to need. So to me, that I think is the best deal that I could make. And then I don't have to worry about him going to Washington and turning Jaden Daniels of the Commanders into a dynasty. I don't got to worry about him, going to
in general.
I don't worry about him going to Green Bay. A lot of people say Green Bay may want him. I don't want to see him in Green Bay.
That's fine. He's not going anywhere the 49ers don't want him to go, though, Larry.
AFC, and it's, the odds are he's probably not going to play in the playoffs. I would say the Patriots are at least 3 years away from any kind of playoff run, and they're probably more like 5 to 10 years away from any kind of.
You are issuing him to football purgatory.
Yeah, I mean,
you're punishing him with that.
You just banished him. You banished him. Yeah. He's in a major media center, but which will, I'm sure, annoy the hell out of him. Yeah. But but essentially, you don't have to worry about him getting the upper hand. You may not win the Super Bowl, but he ain't going to win it either. And you get, you get a starting corner with size who's young, and you get a second-year receiver who's small but quick, and you get a draft choice. And it's not a first. They keep their first, so because they're going to probably be first pick in the draft, but you're going to get their high second, and to me that's fair. A high second, a replacement receiver, and Christian Gonzalez. I'm done with the Aiyuk discussion. I'm done with the paying the receivers that much money. I know Shanahan loves Debo anyway. What if Debo has a big year? This way, now if Debo has a big year, you can keep him.
You're betting though on Debo having a big year, but also somehow coming out of this year healthier than he's ever. Like, it's not a question on if they think Debo can be productive. It's a question on if they think Debo can stay alive as a football player. And there's just no reason to believe that the best football Debo Samuel has played is in the future. So you cannot re-up him. You cannot give him a new contract. And ultimately, they're at kind of a shit or get off the pot moment when it comes to Debo Samuel, and they've decided to get off the pot. You and I can agree on the fact that Brandon Aiyuk isn't worth what he's asking to be paid. Now, the question is and
he's really not worth it to the Niners, despite the fact he's a great run blocker, because they want to run the ball. They want to run the ball.
They want to run the ball, yes.
Or let's just say this. He's a better receiver than they technically need. That's all.
Technically need. But the entire point of the Super Bowl window is having surplus needs. It's having a quarterback who made $1 million or even less. He was not even top 51 at one point when he was starting in the NFL. It's having that, and then you getting so much talent around him that no matter how he played, you were fine. Even the most important position in sports, no matter how well he played, you were fine. Now, he ended up playing exceptionally well. And I do think that there is something to be said for the 49ers very much believe in Brock Purdy, but they also very much believe that they should have what they view as an elite wide receiver alongside him. And I would say this, I know that the statistics bear something out, but the feel of that offense last year was very different than the feel that we had when Trey Lance was quarterback for that blip in time, and certainly when Jimmy Garoppolo was the quarterback and anyone who preceded him, in that they went 4-5 wide a lot. They went empty a lot. They played Big 12 football plenty. And in particular, in the two games where they really needed it, they went full Big 12 in the second half of the NFC divisional round, NFC championship game, where Brock Purdy was just slanging that thing. And that is something that Kyle Shanahan has openly said, that's what Brock feels comfortable with. We're going to put Brock in shotgun on every snap. We're not going to be in 11 personnel as often. I think they're going to be, 21 personnel as often. I think they're going to be a pretty heavy 11 personnel team now moving forward since they paid Juwan Jennings. I think that some of the statistics, again, are a little bit skewed by the fact that the 49ers just don't run a lot of plays. But I think that this is a team that wants to be more passing. I think that while we say, of course, it's a Kyle Shanahan team, they want to run the ball, they want to pound the rock, that's fine. They don't have to. They want to take what the defense is giving them. And when you have Christian McCaffrey, a lot of times that's throwing the football. And you think about what they did on first down last year. They were in empty as often as any team in the NFL besides the Arizona Cardinals. They took what the defense gave them. And that includes going 4-5 wide. And yes, you do have the depth. I think that the 49ers would have a better argument for moving off of Brandon Aiyuk if Ricky Pearsall was here to start training camp. I don't know when he gets activated. Maybe he is there. I think that no matter what happens, we're going to get to see a lot of Ricky Pearsall if he's healthy or if he's capable of playing. We're going to see a lot of Ricky Pearsall as the next receiver. And we might have a better idea if Brandon Aiyuk is worth what he's worth to the San Francisco 49ers with a couple of training camp practices with Ricky Pearsall standing in for Brandon Aiyuk in the offense. But if we're not going to get that, Brandon Ayuk's leverage goes up a little bit. I know he's botched every bit of leverage to this point, but it goes up a little bit if there's no clear-cut backup for him, if there's not an obvious replacement for him, and if Ricky Pearsall isn't out there to say, hey, you know what, Brandon Ayuk's really, really good. He's an all-pro player, but here I am. I'm cheap, And the difference between what you're going to pay him and what you're going to have to pay me isn't worth the delta when it comes to cost. Until we see that, we're just guessing that. And Kyle Shanahan is not a man who operates very much on faith. That's not his ball game. He needs to see it. This is the same guy who trusts veterans again and again and again. He just does not operate on faith at all. So while, you say, hey, you drafted him early, you got Cowing here, you got all these guys. Those guys got to earn it the same way that Brandon Aiyuk earned it. And it took a shit long time for Brandon Aiyuk to earn it. And now that he's earned it, he's a made man. And I don't think they're going to go full Joe Pesci and blow his brains out in the room when he comes in to negotiate.
And don't think it's like a for sure thing that you're going to earn that respect. I mean, ask Cam Latu about that right now. He's
Cam Latu wasn't even around long enough to figure out that he didn't get
he's still around. He's still around, but we'll see what he does this summer. Craft Bait Live says, Larry, when does Kyle Shanahan or John Lynch talk to the media again? Probably next
Wednesday.
Probably the 25th, maybe something like that.
Oh, something like that. What day is it?
Right. And don't they report? I mean, the first media availability is probably going to be on the 24th or 25th.
Yeah.
So, and I would imagine Shanahan will be the first person that talks.
They open it up with those two at the dais talking about the team. Sometimes actually, I think last year and the year before that, I think it was just Lynch one time and then Shanahan, and then sometimes they do it together. I think one year it was supposed to be just Lynch, but Kyle's like, I'm going to do this too. There's a weirdness there. I think that was about the Bosa thing. So maybe they just do it again this time around, but they will speak before the month is up. Joseph Gordon says, thank you for these podcasts. I watch all of them. I appreciate That's
you.
That's very kind, Joseph.
Appreciate you. Okay. Let's see if we got all of those. Yeah, we got all these. Oh, we got MF. MF says, will Farhan get axed? I got one baseball question, one basketball.
I have a feeling.
I guess there was a Bob Nightingale story in the last 24 hours.
Oh, yeah.
That said that if Farhan Zaidi's Giants do not make the playoffs, that he's out at the end of the year. And it also said AJ Preller, and there was a third guy in there as well. But it's funny because it kind of does coincide with what I was told early in the year. I was going crazy because the Giants extended Farhan, gave him a 3-year deal to align with Melvin in the offseason. And I just didn't think Farhan deserved it. And I went to one of the Giants owners and I said, hey, what the hell are you guys doing? What are you guys even thinking?
Right.
And he said, Krug, relax. We're doing this as a way to better pursue free agents because you have a better chance of landing them if you have a united front instead of guys on different timelines and so on and so forth. But he basically told me, hey, look, if Farhan doesn't make the playoffs this year after the money that we spent, his ass is gone. You know what I mean? Yeah. So now that's what I heard from one of the owners in March. Now we're starting to hear Nightingale's reports that if they don't make the playoffs, that Farhan will be out. I guess my question is, do you believe that's true? And what do you think the Giants will or should do at the trade deadline? And will Farhan, if you're the owners, do you give him license to make moves knowing that, he might be out?
Yeah.
They've been more disappointing, it seems like, in the past, but he's emphasizing how disappointing they are this year. I think it's because it's all related to the money that was spent. Entirely. It's like, if we don't spend money, we can be disappointing. But if we spend money and we're disappointing, man, then there's hell to pay. So I get the sense that it was like, we spent this money. We thought we were going to be good. We're not good. It's a 5-alarm fire. But what do you think is going to happen? Is he going to be allowed to make monumental moves? Will he only be allowed to do smaller moves, or will they allow him to move a Bryce Eldridge in a trade deadline deal, who might be a big prospect for them in a year or two?
Yeah. Or
do you think he's lost a lot of his power and he can't do anything? He kind of made it seem like, hey, we don't need to make a big move, but they do. They absolutely do. And they've got pitchers they could sell. I mean, I'll say this too, if you're really aggressive, if you're the Giants, how do you not look at the Yankees right now? They have no third baseman. You have Matt Chapman. They have no second baseman. You have their former prospect, Tyro Estrada.
Yeah.
They have no pitching. You have Snell and Ray and Cobb. They have no closer, and you've got Doval. I mean, the Giants, and they've got Jason.
You might really just have Ryan Walker there, given
yeah.
Doval.
But I mean, Doval's throwing 98 still. I mean, I'm just saying, supposedly there's teams out there that really want Doval if the Giants make him available, and I don't doubt it. He's got multiple years of control left on that contract, but why not make a big deal with the Yankees and see if you can get a guy like Dominguez? I mean, just or Spencer Jones or one of these guys that they have. What do you think? What's Farhan going to do in July?
I think he does probably very little. That is par for the course. The reason behind that is that these guys are just good enough to fuck this up. They're just good enough to convince everybody, hey, we got a shot. I did a little math. Who in their right mind thinks the San Francisco Giants are going to go 38-27 down the stretch? No,
they haven't been more than 2 games over 500 at any point all season.
38-27.
They haven't been 500 at all since late May. It's now middle of July.
The best they've played, they were roughly 60% team. And that was for 10 days. They were 60% winning percentage. They beat the Dodgers and the Braves in back-to-back series. That's the best they've played. I'm sure they'll just win 60% of their games from here on out, though, right? 38-27.
They're going to rampage the league.
38-27, by the way, only gets them to 85 wins, which might not even be enough to get a wild card. And then you get the wild card, and then you get absolutely smoked in 2 games by the Milwaukee Brewers when Christian Yelich goes off for 9 runs in a series. It's just, that's the reward. The question that the Giants have to ask themselves is, why are they in a situation where the man who is driving the car probably has interests that don't align with the organization's? Why is Farhan Zaidi still in charge if he needs to make the playoffs to keep his job? If we're at that point of ultimatum, it's over. It's over. You needed to fire him already. I'll be a defender of Farhan. Not that I think he's any great shakes, but I consistently ask the question, who else? Who else? They're all like this. There's no, everyone, I hate analytics, I hate numbers. Get cool. Everybody does it this way. So you just don't like Farhan. That's fair. I mean, no one's arguing that Farhan's done a great job. The argument is, if you're they should go with guys who do it by the gut, those don't exist anymore. The nerds won. So this overarching, this meta-analysis. I
mean, there's Mike Rizzo. There's a couple guys like that.
Well, Mike Rizzo sucks. He's not very good. His team sucks.
I mean, he's got a World Series ring.
Yeah.
But I hear you. I hear you. But there's hardly any old school guys. They're all these.
They're all run like a hedge fund. And guess who owns the fucking team? Guys who run hedge funds. So they're going to hire a hedge fund guy. We're at the point where they have prolonged the inevitable. That's all I'm saying. And that's the worst thing that you can do. You prolong the inevitable, and now you have a fat conflict facing you. Because the smart thing to do, if you're the San Francisco Giants, is acknowledge we're not going 38-27 down the stretch. I don't care if Blake Snell is bad. Oh, Robbie Ray's here. Oh, shit, here comes Cobb. You're not going 38-27. What you did do this season is good. You found somebody in your system who can be an everyday foundational player. He's a fucking all-star. And Elliot Ramos. You won. That's a step towards progress. It's not nearly enough to compete with the Dodgers, but it's a little bit better. I don't know if you
won. I mean, you left them in the minors till the middle of May.
Well, it worked out, I guess. I don't know. I mean, it is what it is. It is what it is. He is an all-star. He is a foundational piece for this team. I think the Matt Chapman signing has worked out for them. We can have a conversation about Snell and Soler. That's a different conversation. Regardless, they have somebody that, alongside Chapman, alongside Bailey, alongside Jung-Hoo Lee, presumably when he comes back, and then Ramos, maybe Matos is a guy who can come through in that way in the second half. You've got something to build upon here. You have a farm system with some guys that you really, really like, and they've been able to produce pitching at a very high level, especially out of the bullpen. There are reasons to think that this team has something going for it moving forward. Now is the perfect time to be real with yourself and say, shit, we got guys like Yaz, Lamont Wade Jr., they're going into the final year of their contract next year. They're 30, 31, 32, right? It's not like there's some breakout coming for any of them. Lamont Wade can't stay healthy to continue his breakout. He's barely as a qualified hitter. You got Michael Conforto. He's an unrestricted free agent, or whatever the fuck they call it in baseball these days. But he doesn't have a contract for next year. They're going to give him a qualifying offer. Michael Conforto, they're going to qualifying offer him. He might be dumb enough to take it. Like, sell those guys. Sell those guys for something and put in a young player and see if you got something there. They took too long with Nick Ahmed. Brett Wisely comes in. He's giving you something. Is he a great player? Probably not. Is he someone who can play for you every day? Maybe. Maybe. It's more interesting finding out yes or no than it is to see if Nick Ahmed still got something left in the tank. I don't need to see Lamont Wade Jr. again. And I hate that when I go on KMBR and say, well, why is this guy still on the team? Like, what are we doing here? I get chastised repeatedly. Not that I give a shit because I'm right and they're wrong. But like, the fact that Lamont Wade Jr. is seen as untouchable by the Giants fan base, I've never seen a Lamont Wade Jr. jersey, Larry. How can he be untouchable? Put your money where your mouth is, Giants fans. So the notion that, oh, you can't trade him, he's our second best hitter, then your team sucks. Your team sucks, and you should be selling him because you obviously need more help than Lamont Wade Jr. could possibly provide you in this and next year. The only goal, and this is the part that really chaps my ass on this. San Francisco Giants have the money. They showed this year that even though they don't want to spend it, they have it, and they can if they really want to. And heaven forbid that they actually are forced to do it, but they actually did it this year. This is a big market team. This is an exceptionally profitable team. It's a big fucking market. It's about to get bigger when one of the baseball teams leaves town. Not that they were taking out too much of a chunk of it. And what kills me is that the expectations seem to be lower. It seems as if the fan base is giving this organization a pass because now it's turned into this political fight about Farhan. I don't give a shit on who's in charge. The goal should be simple. Beat the Dodgers every day. Is that a big ask? Hell yeah. The Dodgers are the best run organization in baseball. They're winning games left and right. They got fucking Shohei Ohtani, Mookie Betts, and Freddie Freeman on top of Will Smith. They got dudes on dudes on dudes. That was not always the case. That's a hell of an organization. They built it up, and then they started flashing their cash. It is a long journey and a big gap between the Giants and the Dodgers. But the goal should be very clear. Beat the Dodgers. And the second you just say, actually, I just want to make the wild card. I just want to be 85 wins. Is the second that you have sold your soul to mediocrity, and you won't even get that anymore because you stopped aiming high. You lowered your goals. That is a death knell for success in this league. And I don't care who's in charge. That's much higher than Farhan Zaidi. Frankly, that's almost an organic thing with the fan base. I find it to be totally unacceptable. Whomever is the GM or whoever is the head poobah of this team, the goal needs to be unequivocal, unchallenged. How do we compete with the Dodgers? And I don't think keeping Lamont Wade Jr. around for a third year of arbitration gets this team any fucking closer to competing with the Dodgers.
They need a new owner. They need a new owner because the bottom line on this thing is that they're just every one of their owners has 3 World Series rings. Oh, yeah. Every one of their owners has plenty of money in their pocket, and they just had so much success that they're just existing now for like secondary reasons. Like, got into it because we wanted to win a World Series. Oh, I got 3 rings. Okay, I've been to 3 World Series. Okay, we want to make money. We got more money than we know what to do with. We own our own ballpark.
We can only,
now what do we want to do?
Well,
now we just don't. Larry. Now we just want to kind of, get a nice little Oakland A's, little profit, and just I don't really want. We're not really trying to win. We're just trying to not lose, and we're just kind of going through the motions.
That's a baseball issue. They incentivized mediocrity.
Yeah, totally.
So now you don't have to. They put in effectively a hard cap. They incentivize
and they don't even
mediocrity.
Spend. I mean, it's one thing to say that the Dodgers. I mean, the Dodgers have more revenue than the Giants, but the Dodgers also spend a higher percentage of that revenue than the Giants, and you're never going to beat them if they're spending more and a higher percentage. They generate more revenue, but if they're spending 52%, you're spending 47%, you're already working at a disadvantage. How about the draft? What do you think of the draft? Anything stand out to you?
Supposedly the draft?
The Giants got a kid named Dakota Jordan.
Oh, I don't know.
Well, no, they took the kid Tibbs out of Florida State.
Yeah, I kind of like that. The person that I trust on the draft really liked him.
This Dakota Jordan, though,
Okay.
is a
Talk to me.
beast. He's a first baseman, I believe, outfielder. He played for Mississippi State.
Yeah, Mississippi State.
The guy's got ridiculous bat speed.
Yeah.
There are people asking if the Giants pulled off one of the biggest steals in the entire draft. He was number 34 on the top 250 list, and he went to the Giants in the 4th round at pick number 116. So he's got great bat speed.
I mean, the Giants have had wonderful success and terrible failures with the draft. I just, baseball is like it where it's, man, I don't watch any college baseball. I mean, maybe 5 innings a year as compared to thousands of innings of Major League Baseball. There are, there's a couple of people that I trust when it comes to prospects and draft, mainly for fantasy baseball purpose. I just, I'm not sure if Farhan Zaidi is going to have a job at the end of this year. So these guys who are 3-4 years away, I mean, unless you're coming up, unless you're fucking Paul Skeens, it's hard for me to get too amped. I mean, you even think about, some of the picks that the Giants have had. I mean, they're still hanging out in single A, double A. No, I don't have any thoughts on the draft, just to answer your question, Larry.
Check this kid out, Dakota Jordan.
Okay.
He's got crazy bat speed. One last one on the Warriors. I guess Joe Lakeup's getting mad that Danny Ainge wants Kuminga, Moody, and Pods, and like 4 number 1s for Markkanen. I just don't think that Danny Ainge understands. It's like if you just go into a deal not wanting to make a trade, then you can just not make a trade until you get just absolutely overwhelmed. Nobody's willing to overwhelm him, and he's just asking for the moon. And Joe Lakeup's like, yeah, this guy's he's got no connection to reality. Joe wants to make this deal for Markkanen. The Warriors are not the Warriors are in a lurch because, I mean, I've heard people connected to the Warriors and their stations and say that they're better, but they're not better. They're maybe they're
Larry, they're better. They're the 9 seed now. They were the 10 seed.
They're not better. They lost Clay, they lost Paul, and they added
you're telling me Kyle Anderson,
Buddy Hield, and Slow-Mo.
Kyle Anderson averaged 6 points a game last year, Larry. You can't sniff at that. He has such great basketball IQ.
But here's the question. If they can't get Markkanen, then what? Do you go for Steph Curry? I mean, do you go for Kyle Kuzma? Do you try for somebody else? And then I just saw today that Seth Curry signed up to play in Charlotte.
He was on Charlotte last year.
Yeah, he was on Charlotte, so he re-signed to play in Charlotte.
Yeah,
that's where they're from.
He's injured to high heavens.
Why not trade Steph there for Melo and Brandon whatever and all kinds of picks? Why not?
Well, I feel like Charlotte North Carolina. I mean, I don't think that Charlotte would make that deal for a Brandon Miller.
They would trade you Melo, Brandon Miller, and some picks for Steph Curry. Pack that house.
I mean, yeah, I'd pack the house. That's I think that they finally actually kind of got their act together in Charlotte for the first time in a long time. And
they just re-signed Miles Bridges. I don't know about that.
Miles Bridges is a piece of shit human, but a hell of a basketball player.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if we want to be a moral.
Well, what do you think? Here. I mean, is because they need Markkanen to reopen the Steph title window. If they can't reopen the Steph title window with Markkanen, then you're on to Brandon Ingram and Kyle Kuzma and DeRozan, or not DeRozan, but Levine. None of those guys, I think, actually do open Steph's window.
Nope.
And then, Steph said the other day, I think everybody knows Steph wants to finish with the Warriors, but he said things change fast in the NBA, and
that's right.
The way he said it was very chilling, and I just think that he's saying to them, "Hey, go get me somebody to help me win a title in my twilight years." They're saying, "Let's do it." Yep. But then there's this big thing called actually doing it. That's actually kind of hard. And they probably don't have the pieces to do it. And so then the question is, okay, so if you can't compete for a title while Steph's here, isn't it just a matter of time before because Steph's in good shape. Steph's going to have 5 years left. He might have 6 years left. He's going to play a long time.
Yeah.
And if he was playing a year, if this year was his last year, okay, one thing. If next year, if he was going to play 2 years, okay, fine. Do what you can to put somebody around me. And if you fail, you fail. And by the time you fail, it's time for me to retire anyway. But they're going to try to put somebody around him for, the next year or two. They're going to fail. And then isn't he just going to say, I'd like to finish elsewhere? Yes. Isn't that what's going to happen here? Or do you?
Yes.
Do you think something else? You think you do?
No, I think it's going to happen. I think they have 1 year to get a number 2. I think that, frankly, they're about to waste a year. Now, a couple points I want to make. One, Joe Lacob's out here, but whatever. From what I actually have ascertained, the Warriors' hang-up isn't Kuminga's not in the deal. There's no reason for Utah to want Kuminga. If they're not going to extend Lauri Markkanen, why would they extend Jonathan Kuminga? So what are we doing here? I don't at all buy.
Well, they love Kuminga.
They love Kuminga, but Utah doesn't. So this notion that, he wants everybody. Yeah, that's how an opening salvo
begins. Utah
begins.
Supposedly wants him, though, right?
I have heard differently. I've heard that they, of course, are very interested. But
they probably just want everything. They
said, we'll take it all. And the Warriors said no. And then there's another conversation that has to happen. If we get down to brass tacks, here's what my understanding is. Utah wants all the draft picks, and they want Brandon Podziemski. The idea that the Warriors, which is my understanding at this moment, that the Warriors are like, it's one thing to ask for the draft picks, but to ask for Brandon Podziemski, the fact that they are kind of getting tied up on Brandon Podziemski,
who's having a good summer league, but
he's a good, solid player. I don't want to impugn the reputation of a Brandon Podziemski, but what the fuck are we talking about here? He is a high floor, low ceiling role player,
combo guard. He's a good rebounder.
Yeah, he's
not bad, but come on, he should not be
solid winning player.
He should not be preventing you from getting marked.
He's not your future. He's not your present. He's a good player on a good team. You know why Danny Ainge loves him. It's because he sees himself in Brandon Podziemski. Was Danny Ainge the kind of player that you say, we can't give up Danny Ainge? Danny Ainge got traded like 7 times. It's like, what are we doing here? Brandon Podziemski is a very nice player. The fact that you could get out of this thing, giving up all your draft picks, because that is it's a non-starter. You're giving up all the draft picks. And to get out of there with just losing Podziemski, and for the Warriors to be hand-wringing over that, they should be running to the league office in New York to certify that trade. And I really do believe that's what it would take. And they are being like, well, Podziemski, how about a Moses Moody? It's like, no, it's Podziemski. That's who Utah wants. That's who Danny Ainge wants. He wants all your picks, and he wants Brandon Podziemski. And the fact that you would say, I'm not sure because we don't really know who our backup point guard would be. Well, it's not Podziemski. He's not a fucking point guard. And he's killing it in summer league. So is this guy they just signed to a 2-way deal who's going to see 5 minutes of game action all year. He's killing it in summer league too. If you've played a single minute in the NBA and you don't kill it in summer league, you can't be in the NBA anymore.
So who's that guy? Plum something or something?
Something. I mean, the Black Plumlee. I don't know, but that deal has to get done. It has to get done because I think that there's also this other thing that we're talking about. Because again, I agree with you. I wrote even a column saying, hey, Steph gave himself an out here, and he basically put the clock on the Warriors. It's like 1 year. This time next year, I'm either signing an extension or you're trading me somewhere else. And Steph Curry is currently with Team USA. And we all know how Team USA goes. That's just recruiting. Everyone's out there just recruiting Steph Curry. Hey, man, your team only finished 10th in the Western Conference. Don't look like it's going to be that much better. Can I interest you in a Minnesota? Can I interest you in a Los Angeles Lakers? Hey, come on down to the Clippers. Make a shit ton of money. Play in the Intuit Dome. They got fancy toilets. There's every team in the NBA that's got a player on Team USA right now is working Steph Curry to get him on their team. As the Warriors did with Kevin Durant, as LeBron and Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade did years before that. These guys got nowhere to go and nothing but time to talk and drink absurdly expensive wine and to just figure out where Steph's going next summer. That's how it went. And if I'm the Warriors, I got to be feeling that pressure. There's another aspect of this whole thing that I don't think is being talked about a lot. We talk about Steph Curry's window, his window of contention. Draymond Green is also there. And while we all feel pretty comfortable with the idea that Steph Curry, who, by the way, I will note, looked a little bit old at times last year, particularly in the second half.
Down the stretch.
Okay, so we already know it's kind of coming down a little bit. Not that it's still not at an extremely high level. He was all NBA last year, but like this ain't the Steph Curry of days of yore. What happens when Draymond Green falls off the cliff? Because he is the other foundational piece here. And, you can say, well, Draymond last year, he got injured, or he got injured a little bit. And then, of course, he was just choking people out on the court. And he only played 50-some games. Can you imagine what they would have done if he had played more? Well, no, not really, because Draymond's only going to give you 50 games a year. I don't care if he's choking dudes out or if he's twisting his knee. You're getting 50. That's how it goes. At his point in his career, with the mileage that he's put on that body, you're getting 50. What happens when that turns into 40? What happens when that turns into 30? And what happens when that 50 isn't the same 50 that we used to see from him? Because I still think he was an exceptional defensive player last year. At some point, that will not be the case anymore. So what are you going to have to mitigate that issue? And I don't think DeAnthony Melton and slow-mo are the answer. So we got to think about the Draymond Green window and the Steph window.
What are they doing? I mean, it's like, do you really? I mean, is Joe Lacob really think that DeAnthony Melton, slow-mo, and Buddy Hield is an upgrade from what they were last year? And even if it was an upgrade, they just get drubbed by Sacramento in the play-in game.
That's right.
I mean, at best they're like a 7 seed. I mean, to me, it's just like it's going to be a sad day, but it's coming, man. It's coming there because they're not going to be able to surround Steph with good enough players, and then they're going to lose, and they're going to lose a couple of years, and he's going to regress a little bit, and then he's probably just going to say, "Hey, you know what? Let me finish." If he doesn't finish with the Warriors, where do you think he'll finish?
Probably LA,
Lakers,
Clippers. I mean, there's a couple options there. I mean,
I was thinking maybe Charlotte.
Yeah, everyone says Charlotte.
I was thinking maybe the Knicks, just because.
Well, they can't do it anymore.
So good for the Knicks.
They have spent so much goddamn money that there's no fucking chance.
I mean, you'd have to take back the UConn kid.
You know what? Here's a sneaky one: Toronto. Spent a good chunk of his childhood in TO. His wife's from TO.
Toronto
Raptors.
But you got to make somebody come back here, though.
Yeah, I mean, listen,
it makes a lot of money. I was thinking Sacramento just because of Mike Brown, and they have Fox, and you could go Fox and I
would like to note this. I mean,
you could have Sabonis, DeRozan, and Steph all together.
He could just say, "Hey, I'm not re-signing." He's got 2 years left on his contract. He'll be 38 years old, I think. Ooh, 38 years old off the top of my head. And he could just say, I don't want to sign an extension. I have been with your team for 10 years, so I do have a no-trade clause built in. You can't trade me anywhere. I'm going to leave at the end of the year. I'll just go find greener pastures. I'll go sign somewhere for whatever. No sign and trade, none of this shit. I don't want to. The mistake that Carmelo Anthony made all those years ago.
He wouldn't leave Joe in a lurch like that, I don't think.
It's not a lurch if you tell him it's happening.
Well, you still got to have some assets, to try to rebuild with.
I mean, I get that, but those assets are actively hurting. You lose those assets, now Steph Curry's team that he's going to isn't as good as it could have been. And you think about, the Carmelo Anthony situation all those years ago when he's like, no, I could sign with New York in the offseason, but you trade me right fucking now to New York. And they had to trade away all this stuff. And then the Knicks were never as good as they possibly could have been because they had to give up so many assets to get Carmelo Anthony, who they could have just gotten 3 months later. And I do think that a lot of players have heeded that message in recent years. Sign and trades and second apron and all that shit comes into play. I don't Houston, San Antonio might be willing to make that splash at that point. I mean, the other thing with Steph too is that, he's been on one team. He is liked by everybody. Is he buddy with anybody on it? His buddy's Kent Bazemore, who is he, really close with? He's had a wife and kids for his entire NBA career. Like he's not, going, LeBron and Draymond are going to different cities together. Oh, they're in Prague this weekend together, hanging out. Like there's nothing like that with Steph. He golfs, everyone likes him. He has a lot of friends. I wouldn't say that he has any, close buddies. And so trying to extrapolate, well, where will he go? He'll probably go to sentimentality. So that's Charlotte, that's Toronto. Or, listen, he's got
maybe LeBron. Maybe he'll go play with LeBron.
Got a big ass house in LA.
Yeah, he does. And, if the Warriors wanted to move him to LA, there's several deals that you could make with LA that could be very attractive.
And there's one other thing that I think we probably do need to keep in mind as it pertains to Steph Curry. Like there will be NBA expansion here in the not too distant future. In fact, we might be talking about an expansion team as soon as 2 years from now. If I'm Steph Curry and I'm trying to end my career with some grace, understanding there won't be any titles, I'm not going to go ring chasing. I have my legacy well secured. There are worse ways to exit and to get a new challenge than to go to an expansion team and kind of have a little bit of a piece of the action at the start there.
Making the owner.
And then slide into a significant ownership role or significant basketball role with big money once it's all said and done. But, going up to Seattle, bringing back the Supersonics, going to Las Vegas. It's something that I thought Bob Myers would do because he wanted that new challenge. And it's just like, just fucking wait like 2 years. You can be the guy who builds.
Yeah, but Bob Myers knows. I think Bob Myers knows he's not he lucked out on the basketball side. He's not a general manager, not a top tier general manager. So he'd rather go hire a general manager and, rebuild that Commander's brand and make all that money. Yeah. What do you think of this trade? This trade works for Utah and the Warriors. Tell me if you like this one.
Yep.
This would be Wiggins, Moody, Pajemski, and a whole slew of picks to Utah for Markkanen, Colin Sexton, and Kenny Lofton Jr.
Kenny Lofton is unimportant. He's not an NBA player.
He's not an NBA player. He's just a bench guy. But it would be the reason this one's intriguing to me is because I kind of think that Sexton is a on the ball point guard, and Steph could probably, if you want to freshen up Steph, you got to find somebody who can run the point. So let him kind of play off the ball. And
but you're not getting
Sexton, man. You could just have Steph play off the ball.
Yeah,
Sexton's only 25. That could be nice. Because otherwise, who's gonna? The way this team is structured right now, Steph's gonna be dribbling like 90% of the time.
That's right. Well, they're adamant that Pajemski can be the backup point guard.
Yeah, but he's probably going to get moved.
Sure. Listen, I like it enough. I don't think Utah wants that because I think that they can extract a larger toll with Sexton with another team. Oh, well, we just got 5 first-round picks for Lauri Markkanen, and we're about to pull 3 for Sexton from a team that's desperate at the deadline. And now we got 8. Now we got this big Oklahoma City Thunder-like package that we can just rest upon as we, get Cooper Flag and ride this thing all the way to the gates of hell. I will say this. I am less reticent to give up draft picks than I was even a couple of weeks ago. Just having a lot of conversations with people who are much smarter at this than I am. Like, if you're just doing it once, if you're just going all in once, you can manage. The issue is that you end up in a situation like, who was it? Well, Philadelphia. You end up in a situation like Phoenix would be a great example, where you've now gone all in twice. You gave up all these assets for Durant. You then gave up all these assets for Bradley Beal. That has to work out because now you just got 2. And, once that one bill is done being paid off, now you got to pay off another. Now you're paying for bills with credit cards on credit cards. And it's just like, oh boy, you're all the way in. The Clippers had the same issue. The bill comes due for all the Oklahoma City stuff here in the next couple of years for Paul George. Well, then after that, you got to start paying, Philadelphia with picks so that you had James Harden. And it's when you go in, big twice that you're really fucked. So do it once, do it right. listen, I can get into the flaws in Markkanen's game, but here and now for the next 2-3 years, Lauri Markkanen is the best the Warriors can do and a really nice fit, particularly alongside Draymond Green, particularly alongside Steph Curry, which is who you have to think about when you're building this team. And the idea that Brandon Podziemski, who, again, I want to be clear, is a very nice, positive player, but he is a high floor, low ceiling guy. Brandon Podziemski will never sniff an NBA All-Star game. He will never sniff all NBA. He will never sniff all defense. Like, he's just a really good player that right now is on a not very good team and is in an ideal world traded to an even shittier team in the Western Conference. Like, the fact that he could be the breaking point, the straw that breaks the camel's back for the Warriors is unconscionable to me. It makes no sense whatsoever. I can understand why they don't want Kuminga in the deal. Luckily, the situations don't align to where Kuminga makes any sense. And you can get this deal done. By the way, we'll have resolution here. They have to, they can start negotiating with Kuminga and stuff like August 1. Markkanen has basically a 1-day window to sign an extension with Utah.
August 8th, right?
The 6th. So he can sign with the 6th, and then if he signs an extension, you can't trade him for 6 months. So if he signs on the 6th, there is an outside chance that you can actually get him because the trade deadline is like February or March 7th. So you would have 1 day worth of cushion for that 6-month window. If he signs at any point after that, he's untradeable this season. So Utah will have to figure out what it is they want to do. And by the way, them just re-signing Markkanen is a very real possibility, if not the more probable outcome at this point. They'll have to figure out what to do with him before August 6th because there's no purpose in them re-signing him on August 8th where they couldn't even trade him. So
I don't think it's going to get done. The Warriors wanted him, but only for their deal, and Ainge is not going to give them a good deal. So it's just I don't see it happening. Jordan Pena says we need power, Soto or Trout. Oh, I'll take Soto, no doubt on that one. And Jolt says is Krug still on the Pete Alonso train? I do like Pete Alonso. I would go for the polar bear, but I don't see him getting traded either.
What about Lamont Wade?
Yeah, exactly.
Isn't he getting it done for you? Just go out and get Soto.
Yeah, though I can see the Giants trading Lamont Wade. I mean, there's other teams that would probably could use Lamont Wade.
The Yankees would love to have Lamont Wade.
Yeah, he's having a good year. He's having a good year. There's just no way around it. The
Giants can get top 25 prospects, not an overall baseball, but like from a team. They can get like a top 25 prospect for Lamont Wade Jr. right now. And the fact that they haven't already done that is malpractice.
Well, and I think they ought to really consider moving Doval because I think, but Doval's good right now, but he's starting to strike. He's starting to show flaws. I think the Yankees showed you earlier this year that if you get a patient team that is going to wait him out, you're going to be able to just wreck shop on him. So yeah, I think before he gets exposed, I would try to get something big time for Doval if I could. And just go with the other guy. Just go with Ryan Walker. Walker's, looks great. And the Giants have a bunch of bullpen. And maybe go with Jordan Hicks. Heck, put Jordan Hicks back in the bullpen. Let him
real possibility.
All right, that's going to do it for us. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of the Krug Show. Thanks to Underdog Fantasy for sponsoring this live stream. Thanks to our good friends at Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles. Dieter, when are you going to appear next on the leader? When are we going to hear you next?
Weeks from now. Because your boy is leaving. I'm gone. I'm
going on vacation.
I'm going. Well, is it vacation if you're spending time with your in-laws?
For the public nature of this, yes, it's a good time.
Yes,
out. It's like a great time out.
I am so excited for this trip, Larry. My goodness. Yeah. So I get to drive to undisclosed West Coast city and spend 2 weeks there and. Then drive back. So really excited for all of that. I'm excited to come back and go to training camp. And I'll actually be doing the KNBR morning show from August 1st to the 8th from Levi's Stadium. So we'll be talking to Niners, and me and John Dickinson will be holding down whatever fort still exists with the leader. And I am actually legitimately, I'm a very sarcastic man who says a lot of disingenuous things, but I'm very much looking forward to that.
Yeah, it should be very cool. All right, that's going to do it for us. Thanks to everybody in the chat. Thanks to Dieter. Thanks to all of you. Peace.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you gon' get exactly what you asked for.